Hi there, it's Tiffany, and I'm here today to try to get you started for your single crochet baby sweater. The pattern is on my website. There's a link in the description if you are watching this on YouTube, and that will tell you the type of yarn I'm using. And I'll tell you though, the hook I'm using is a size H 5.0 millimeter. This is a Susan Bates hook, comfort grip. And the first thing you're going to do is chain 43, and then you're going to mark the ninth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes, the ninth place, the 15th chain, the 30th chain, and the 36th chain. So put markers on from the hook, count 9th stitch, 15, 30, and 36. Okay, and then all you're going to do to get started is start in the second chain from the hook with a single crochet, and you will work single crochet into each one of these chains up to where the marker is. And when you see a marker, you're going to work 3 single crochets into that space. And that's what's going to get us the corners of our little neck. This is a neck top down, I guess you would say, baby sweater. I'm starting at the neck. So here's my marker. I'm going to go ahead and remove it and work 3 single crochets. Now, if you have trouble seeing your stitches then on the next row, I'm going to have you, after you make the second one, that's our middle single crochet, I'm going to have you go ahead and throw the stitch marker right back in there, because on the next row, that is the space that you'll work into. And sometimes it's just easier if you're, relatively new, because this is, I hope you have a few projects under your belt of working back and forth. This should be a relatively easy beginner baby sweater. So sometimes if you're just not quite sure what stitches are, go ahead and, okay, here I am in the corner. I worked 1, and after you work that second one, go ahead and stick your stitch marker right back into that space that you just made. And that will help you on the next row. Okay, so continue working 3 single crochet into each one of those corner spaces. And I will meet you back and show you how to turn your work and keep going. Well, how'd you do? This is what the first row should look like. If you chose to mark your middle spaces, you'll see the things, but you've kind of just formed a little square. This will be around the neck. Okay, that's your first little, after the first row, this is what your work should look like. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is chain 1 and turn. And now I'm going to work in the very tops, the first, of the single crochet of the row, work underneath those 2 loops and work a single crochet, and continue working single crochet under the top 2 loops of the stitch from the row below, all the way up to that corner space. And now when you get to the corner, that's when you will work your 3 single crochets again. So here I am. I'm going to work 1 and another 1 and 1 more. Okay, now I'll just continue working around the entire row, chain 1 and turn, and I will work this and increase this work for 9 rows. So go ahead, push pause, and come back and I'll show you how to change color after the 9th row. All right, I have my 9 rows finished, and now I'm going to show you how to add in the next 2 rows. I'm going to change to the color white, but I'm not going to cut this pink off. I'll just carry that up the side. So all you do to change color is before you finish the last step of the single crochet stitch. So what I mean by that is that here's the last stitch. I've inserted my hook and pulled up a loop, and instead of pulling through with pink, I'll drop that. I'll simply lay the white over the hook and I'll pull through, and that's how you change color. Now I will do 2 rows of the single crochet in the white, still increasing just as I have done before in the corners. How's it been going finding that middle spot? I hope you are, your sweater looks like this. You've got your 4 corners increasing, and then after I do the 2 rows, that will change back to pink, and then I will show you how to work and form the little armholes. And it's easier than you think. It's probably in the written pattern. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't. I'll show you how to join and to make the armholes. Okay, so finish these 2 rows and then I'll meet you back. Okay, I've got my 2 rows of white finished, and I'm right here to the end, and I'm about to pull back through with the pink that I never cut off. And that will help you at least on one less end to weave in. But I am going to go ahead and cut off the white. I'll leave myself a fairly long tail. We'll have to weave that in later. Okay, now this is the row where you're going to join to make little armholes. So all you do is you're going to work all the way back to that corner space where you have your 3 single crochets, and in the middle of the single crochet, just as you've been doing, instead of working 3 single crochets, all you'll be doing is working a single crochet, chaining 3, and then finding the next middle space. And I will show you what that looks like. And hopefully it won't be too confusing for you. Okay, we're almost here. Got to get more slack there. Okay, I'm just trying to work quickly to the corner. And here we go. Here's the middle corner. So we'll just work 1 single crochet. Now we're going to chain 3 and skipping over all of these stitches. We're going to just kind of match the 2 ends together, or just kind of hold it like this. Find the middle one. It's very important that you find the middle one. Again, if you have troubles, please use the marker on the row below so you make sure you get the middle one, and work your single crochet into that middle spot. Now continue working all the way across the back and do the same thing with the other corner. Skip over, and I'll show you what this will look like. I don't want to sit there. So when you're done, you'll have your little arms formed like this. Okay, so work across the back, do the color changes. Now, after you're done joining the arms, then the work becomes just around the bodice. We'll come back later for the arms, but for now, we'll just work and finish the bodice out. So, okay, there's one thing I just wanted to show you to make sure it was clear. After you joined with your chain 3, and you have the arms all ready to, you've formed your arms. I, chained 1 and turned, and I came back this way. Well, when you come across, that first row that you'll have the chains, I just want to make sure you work into that single crochet right there. And then all I do is I go ahead and I just insert my hook around the chains, and I'll just work 3 like that. You don't have to try and work underneath the 2 loops. Just go ahead and put 3 single crochets under there, but then just make sure you hit this single crochet, the last one of that round right there, and then continue across the back. And now you'll just go back and forth with straight single crochet, you know, make however many rows and then change to the white. See, so that should be a lot easier to work in the next round. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that you could just work your 3 single crochets around those 3 chains. And then we'll come back and, you know, I'll keep showing you how I add the hood and the sleeves. Okay, how does your sweater look? Hopefully you've got it to this point where you've got, you know, 9 rows, 2 rows of single crochet, 9, 2, 9, 2. I've just completed the last 9. And now I'm going to work what is called ribbing at the bottom of the sweater. So I am going to go ahead and I'm just going to chain 2 and turn my work like this. And for this first row, the chain 2 is going to count this time as the first stitch. So I'm not going to work underneath that first single crochet stitch like I have been. I'm going to go into the second one, and I am going to work double crochet across the bottom of the sweater in each stitch. So double crochet is where I am yarning over, inserting my hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2, and then pulling through 2 more. Yarning over, inserting my hook, pulling back up, yarning over, pulling through 2, and pulling through 2 more. That will give me a row of double crochet all across the bottom, so that on the next row it's a little bit easier to work those front and back post double crochets to get that nice ribbing look. Okay, so I'm going to complete this across the row and I'll be right back. If you want to push pause and complete the row. So I've worked my row of all double crochet, you can see that, up to the last stitch. And now I'm going to chain 2 and turn. And now all I'm going to do is alternate working in the second one. I'll start with the second one. Again, the chain 2 is going to kind of count as our first and just remain over that. So I'm going to insert my hook and pop that post forward. And then I'm going to alternate the next stitch by popping the post towards the back. If you can see that, I'll get my finger out of the way. That's called a back post double crochet. So I'm going to, in the next one, pop it forward for a front post double crochet, and then I'm going to insert my hook in order to pop the post to the back. And I will work down the row to the very end and get that ribbing done. Right, I'm right here to the end, and I wanted to show you how the last stitch was worked. And it does not matter if you landed on a front post or a back post double crochet, it does not matter. I happen to land on a back post double crochet. But the most important thing is when you get to that turning chain, you're just going to work underneath it with a regular double crochet. That's the important thing that I wanted to show you. So it doesn't really matter. Chain 2 and turn and work another row of the ribbing, and then you'll want to tie off. So here we go again, just to remind you, this turning chain of 2 just counts as the first one. And so since this one is forward, I'm going to keep it forward. That's how the ribbing will, you want to keep in the same direction. And then I'm going to work the back one back here. Okay, and I'll work down that row. Then I'm going to, our next step will be to start on the neck with the hood and or the sleeves, it doesn't matter, next step. But we are going to be, I'll show you how to get the sleeve started and the hood, but I think I'll do the hood next after I finish this row. Okay, I hope that's working out for you. All right, one thing I wanted to point out before I start crocheting the hood is that I haven't woven in any of the ends. And before this next step, I recommend that you do, but pay attention to the fact that this is your starting chain. And if it is, you lay your sweater out and it's on the right side, that tells you that that's the kind of the right side out. This will be the front of your sweater. It's kind of tricky to, because it's kind of reversible, but anyway, that is how you'll know. So I'm going to start in this corner, but I'm going to weave in that end really quick before I start. And maybe I'll just show you how I weave in ends, because it's not any big, I don't want people to think it's difficult. And if you haven't seen it before, sorry, I'm hunting for a tapestry needle. I use these blunt type needles, and I simply just weave the end in and out and around any of the stitches to disguise it. And I try and do several inches of it, just in and out. I'll probably work this one down the front because I know I'll be going back with more stitches down the front, so it'll definitely be hidden and secured. So that's all I'm doing. There's no real trick to it other than weave them in and get them secure. And I do it several times and then clip them off. That's probably good enough. So clip that off. Scissors are not that sharp. Okay, so in this corner, I'm going to start by inserting my hook into that space. I had my yarn here ready to go. Too much yarn. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. I'm just simply pulling up a loop, and I am going to chain one, and then I'm going to work right back in that exact same spot with a single crochet to kind of secure that tail for me. Then again, I'll just weave that in later. Okay, now I'm just going to work single crochets along the edge of the neck. One, you can kind of tell it's the bottom of that chain. Just go into each little space with a single crochet. And when you get to the first corner, I'm just going to kind of just work one. You don't have to work three, of that first corner where we, you understand, this is the bottom side of the chain. So you're just going to simply work into each space around the neck. And keep going. Here, I'll just, there is a bigger space for the little corner right there, but after you get the sweater all finished, the tension kind of adjusts, and you don't really see that on the sweater. So that's all I'm doing, single crochet, and I'm going to chain one and turn, and I'm really just going to work. This is how you make the hood, is go back and forth. I think probably, I'll count how many rows after, but it's about 35 rows. I mean, if you happen to have a baby, that you can measure, maybe at that point you can try the little sweater on the baby and make sure the hood is tall enough. But That's all you're going to do. You'll see as you keep making this big, it turns into a big flap. And then after we're done, we'll be able to seam the two ends together, and it forms a little hood. So I'm going to keep my hood this time all pink. In a previous version I did of this baby sweater, I switched colors again every 9 rows, but I think for this one, just for the hood, I'm going to leave this one all pink. I'm not going to add those stripes into the hood. Okay, all right, so that's basically how you get the hood started. Just start in that corner and work all the way around the edge. There you go. Okay, well, I guess I could keep going a few more and I'll show you chain 1 and turn. Kind of hard to find, you know, exactly those stitches. Just kind of go with it. There's kind of like a little cross maybe. And here's the last one. Chain 1 and go ahead and turn. And just keep going, and it just, you know, kind of it straightens out, and you'll just make it grow and grow. About 35 rows or so. I'll have for sure in the written pattern on my website will be specific rows, and I'm sure after I get these many rows done, I'll tell you so I can show you how to sew it together. Okay, see you soon, probably tomorrow. It's gonna take me a while. All right, I'm back to show you what I'm going to do next in order for the hood to be sewn together. So I've got all of my 35 rows, and all I'm going to do now, and I'm sorry, I have done a sleeve, and I'm going to show you that in a second, but you know, so we've worked around and around, so I want to make sure that I don't want to seam it this way, because then we'll see that seam on the top. You're going to want to go ahead and put your edges together this way, so that when you turn it inside out, that seam will be on the inside of your project. So still chain 1 and turn, and get your work ready. And all you're going to do is slip stitch these underneath the top 2 loops on both sides, and slip stitch those sides together. I'm just inserting my hook and then pulling the yarn back through. And I'm just going to work all the way down the edge of this hood and tie off and weave that end in, and that will be my hood. It's put together. Okay, so I'm going to let you go ahead and finish this, and then if you want to push pause, but when I come back on, I'm going to show you how to get the sleeve started. Okay, I think you've got that. All right, well, this is what our sleeve is going to look like. I did, you know, finish it on this side. I put that same little ribbing at the bottom. So in order to get started, you will need to start off with pink. And the first thing, my first tip, is to go ahead and identify which direction you need to be going. And I want you to look at the little V's and pretend that you've already stitched, and it's as if you were chaining 1 and turning. So the little V's, you know, they're worked going this way, so I want to work opposite them. Then you'll make sure these stitches all line up. So in this case, all I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the stitches in the bottom of the armpit there. 2 on one side, 1 on the other. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to pull up a loop, and I'm going to chain 1, and then also single crochet in that space. Okay, now the first step, and then just get your tail out of the way. What I like to do is try and do some single crochet togethers up to this very first stitch up here to kind of fill in this hole that's going to happen. So on the other side of the next single crochet that you can see that's wrapped around those chain 3s, remember those chain 3s that we did for the arm, we're just going to go ahead and yarn over and pull up a loop. Now there's another little space right next to it, and it does not matter how many of these you do. I think about as filling in space wherever you want to put your hook. We're just filling in space, and it will really only just still count as one. So go ahead and then look for that first V over here, the white one. And now we will pull through and go through all of the stitches. That will be our first stitch. You see how that fills in that whole area. Now we're just going to work one single crochet all the way in every white stitch around. Okay, so I will pause and I'll let you work on that, and I'll come back and I'll show you how to finish and join and turn the work. All right, I've crocheted in the top of each little stitch all the way around, and I'm just to the last stitch. And now we're going to mirror how we started. So, and this is where it's tricky to tell which one is the last stitch. I don't want you to get confused. It looks like there's two left, but this is the stitch. This is like the post of this row. So you need to ignore this little space. This is your last space. So I'm going to insert my hook and pull up a loop. And then now I want to go ahead and just come down here. I'm filling in the spaces again. It doesn't matter where, just you want to fill in and see, like, I think I want to come back and actually fill in right there too, because I just don't want any little holes in the armpit area. And it doesn't matter how many you do, just fill that in and then pull through. That's your last stitch. Okay, now you'll see the very first stitch that we made after we chained one. That's where we're going to slip stitch to that. Okay, now at this point is where I want you to go around and count how many stitches you ended up with. I have 28, but sometimes I don't want to lock you into that number because you could be going an extra row and making a bigger size and all of that. The important thing is you to remember the number so that you do it the same on the other sleeve. Okay, somewhere I'm going to estimate that you're between 28 and 30 stitches, and that's about right for this size baby sweater. So we've done the slip stitch. We're going to chain one and turn, and right in that very space where we chained, that's where we're going to go ahead and put our first single crochet. That will be number one. And then number two, I'm going to work all the way, and it's really helpful to just go ahead and count how many single crochets you're doing around. And when you get to 28, slip stitch to the top of the stitch. It's really, really easy to accidentally add one at the end, and then all of a sudden you find your sleeve getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If any time, that is my best tip, is to just go ahead and count these for the first several rows till you really know which stitch is the last one to end in, because it is a little bit confusing. Sometimes it looks like a stitch that could be worked into, but it's the one that we slip stitched into from the row below, and it already had a stitch in it, so it gets a little bit confusing. I know I'm going fast around here because I just want to show you what it looks like. One more time, to chain one and turn. Well, slip stitch, chain one, work a single crochet right back into that space. And then of course you'll do your 9 rows of pink and then your 2 rows of white. Okay, here we go. I'm going to really look at this closely because this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because these are big stitches, because remember we did all that combining on this row. And I still have one more to go in right here. But this stitch kind of has a little arm. I don't know. That's how I know that that's the one I do not want to work into. I'm going to slip stitch over. And I'll go back and count. I mean, I can double check, but that's boring to have you watch me count. Anyway, okay, so you're going to go ahead and do that. And then after you do all of those changes, all I'm going to have you do is the same technique that we did down here. You're going to finish, you're going to chain 2, work 1 row of regular double crochet, and then you'll alternate with the ribbing for 2 more rows. and then simply tie off and weave in the ends, and you'll have your sleeve done. So, all right, how are your sleeves looking? Hopefully everything went okay. You've got your ribbing all done, because now we're to the last part of this sweater. So I still have it laid out in front of me. And I'm going to go to this right side. I'm going to go to this bottom corner. And I am going to pull up a loop in this very bottom corner. Make sure you can see my hands here. In the same manner that we've been doing, chain one, and then I'll go ahead and single crochet in that space. Now here is where there are no hard fast rules for how I did this. I want to roughly work 1 single crochet per space, but you know, down here on the double crochets, it's going to be 2 single crochets per. But the more important thing is to make sure that you are evenly spacing them. That's more important than hitting an exact spot. So if they get too bunched together, your work is going to be ruffled. And if they're too spread apart, it will pull and make it spread apart. So anyway, I mean, pull closely together. So just my rule of thumb is to do your very best to just make it even. So sometimes you'll skip over a row and just do 1, but sometimes you can just continue to go. And so that's it. And then on the remaining rows, it should be easy. You can just work right back into the tops of the single crochets. But when you're working into the sides of rows, it's always so tricky. I have not found a good way other than to say just eyeball it and do your best to make it as even as possible. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to work up and around and go back up and around probably 3 times, maybe 4. I'll see what that looks like and see if I'm getting my sweater to get closer together. And then after the very last on, doesn't matter what side I end on, I'll do 1 more row of single crochet around like that and slip stitch to whichever side, and I'm done, and tie off. So that will be the end of my video making. I'll put pictures of the finished sweater on my website, so please come and get the pattern. It will be on daisyfarmcrafts.com. The link will be in the descriptions on YouTube, and if that's where you're seeing this, but this video will also be on my website. So hello, thank you for coming to Daisy Farm Crafts. I'm Tiffany, and my daughter Hannah and I just love sharing the patterns that we're making in hopes for me to become a grandma and for her to become a mom someday. And we're just having a blast sharing with you all. All right, have a good day.